And welcome back to another edition of the Digital Education Station. I am Ryan Fran, the Chief Communications Officer for Arcadia Unified School District. Pleased to be joined with Dominic Lazzaretto, the City Manager for Arcadia. Thanks for being here, Dominic. We appreciate your time.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for having me.
So you were at our Board of Education meeting at the end of August and talking about some exciting news in our community. A lot of residential developments coming in, some under construction, some planned. So we thought we would have you in today just to get the word out and some of the information to our families in our schools and our parents. So I guess just the overall gist, pretty exciting news, a lot happening with all these different developments and excitement in the city.
Yeah, there's a lot of interest in development in general, but especially residential or mixed-use development right now. A lot of it focused around the downtown core where we'd like to see more density, and some of it in other parts of the city as well where it can handle new developments.
So we'll just kind of go through the presentation that you went through for our Board of Education. So it looks like there's 8 kind of projects overall. Can you kind of give us a general scope of locations and the basics of those 8 projects?
Sure. They're a little bit of everywhere. Most of the density or most of the intensity is around the Huntington corridor. So you have a lot of them that are either around our downtown near Santa Anita. There's one under construction, a couple significant ones being proposed. Also along Huntington on the western side of the city. There's a pretty significant in the old Vaughn's headquarters site. There's a pretty big proposal there. And then up on Foothill, there's a proposal down on Duarte, down on Live Oak. So a little bit of all over, and I'm sure we'll go through some details.
Have we ever had this much kind of construction or developments in the works at one time in recent history in Arcadia?
In recent history, no. We had most of our building boom in the 1960s and before that. And really, it's been kind of an infill here and there. This is really kind of that, in a community that's as old as ours, it's sort of time for a rebirth in some of our commercial stock. And interest right now is to convert commercial into mixed use and to allow more opportunities for residential uses in Los Angeles in general, but especially a community like Arcadia where people want to get in and take advantage of the school system.
So what is the kind of, I guess, the philosophy behind the mixed use, and what will that do for the community and what that brings in with all of that?
Well, downtown's a great example of it, where we had a thriving downtown in the 1950s, and then the mall came in and kind of sucked out a lot of that energy. And so having the houses in the downtown, it'll reactivate that area a little bit. It also creates an opportunity to have a connection through the Gold Line to downtown Los Angeles or other parts of the San Gabriel Valley. So you can have, for millennials or new families, people who may not have 2 cars or don't want any cars, have an opportunity to live in Arcadia, get on and off the Gold Line, and then have shopping and all of that in the downtown right there for them. And it creates its own ecosystem where there's a lot of energy, a lot of nightlife, a lot of opportunity for the rest of Arcadia to appreciate the new changes, and there's enough residential in the area to support shops and restaurants and those kinds of things.
So let's start with the one on Wheeler Avenue.
Sure.
Kind of give us an overview of what this one will look like and anything else we need to know about this development here.
Sure. The one on Wheeler is really the first one in our downtown that takes advantage of the zoning we upgraded in anticipation of the Gold Line coming. So it'll be 38 residential units on the upper floors. I think the number is 16,000 commercial square feet on the ground floor. Kind of a modern look with a touch to historic. Uses brick on the lower levels, give you kind of that Arcadia downtown feel. And then the upper floors have high ceilings and a little more modern residential look for the community. It's only 4 stories high, so it's higher than we're used to, but not as high as some of the communities you're seeing around us.
And then, so that one is currently under construction. And then we go down to on Duarte Road, about a 20,000 square foot ground floor with the restaurant, retail, and then the residential. What about this property here?
Yeah, again, pretty similar in scope and size and look and feel as the one I just described. Not quite as far along on construction, but it's 3 stories high because it's, again, not in the downtown, so we're not wanting to go as high. The downtown's really the area where you're going to get more density changes in the coming years. This is the old sporting goods or the gym that used to be down there on First and Duarte. It'll have a neat, I think, 38 Degrees bakery is coming, which is pretty exciting, I think, for the kids at the high school and the schools around it. But Same thing, real traditional look on the ground floor. A lot of amenities on the upper floors. That's what we're seeing in Arcadia is open space on the upper floors, trees and whatnot on the second and third floors. So patios for folks to hang out on, swimming decks, those types of things.
So with most of these mixed use facilities, are the retailers, do you already know the retailers or just a few? You're going to fill those in? How does that kind of process work?
It really depends on the project and how aggressive the developer is. On this one, they had a game plan when they came to the city council, and by the time they started construction, they had a pretty good idea who most of the retailers were. Unfortunately, they expected to have a major grocery store in the ground floor, and that ended up going in a different part of Arcadia. So they're still searching, or they were still searching for the anchor tenant. I think it's now going to be a larger restaurant.
Very interesting. So then we move to Santa Anita. This is Colorado and Santa Anita, another property here. Tell us about this one.
These will be more like townhomes, 2 stories. This is a former church site right where the Colorado Boulevard and the Gold Line Bridge dips down in there.
Yeah.
You can see that construction's about half done now. These will be much smaller, much more traditional townhome looking things. The architecture kind of takes a nod from the arts and crafts design, Frank Lloyd Wright-y kind of look. Still, again, using a lot of brick and glass and steel. We're seeing a lot of themes like that right now, but we're trying to be modern without going too avant-garde with things.
So how much, that's a great point you bring up. So the look and feel, the architecture of these properties and buildings, how does that process work with the developer and the city and getting something everyone agrees upon or likes?
There's a lot of back and forth with it. A lot of times the architects and the developers have their vision of what they want, and it doesn't matter what the local community wants. They know what sells, they know what the modern consumer is looking for in general, but they don't really know the taste of Arcadia. So there's a lot of times where something will come in, and I think this was a pretty good example of it, where it came in and it was very much like something you'd see in Glendale or downtown Los Angeles, and much more stark and much more kind of you see in a lot of residential development now, there's pop out for no real reason. Those kind of eyebrows that are sticking out all over the building. We've sort of had folks kind of shave off the unnecessary and add back things like the brick and looks that are a little more traditional architecture of Arcadia. But it really is a meeting of the minds that our planning staff have a lot of conversations and back and forth with the architects to get them what they want in terms of the overall feel of the place, while still staying within the aesthetics of Arcadia. And we're allowed to be, you saw the Rusnak building go in.
Yeah.
That's a very forward design,
right.
And right now there's nothing that really sort of matches with it. So we know along Santa Anita we'll allow a little more aggressive design than we will in other parts of Arcadia. So it really is there are about 5 or 6 zones in Arcadia where the architecture might be completely different, because it's different sensitivities on what's there and what we expect to be there in the future.
So timeline-wise, from a developer coming to you to start of construction to it being finished, looks great, come on in for business, how long does that take?
It really depends on who you're dealing with as the architect or the developer. Our review process for some new development like the size of what we're talking about, to get through the environmental and the planning commission and sometimes the city council, you're talking probably 6 months if you've got earnest folks on both sides of the equation. And then development takes anywhere from a year to 2 years depending on the contractor and how big their design is.
So then we go to the one on 130 West Huntington, the former Santa Anita Inn. Another nice property here.
Yeah, and this is one of 2 sites in town where you're allowed to go to 8 stories, and this developer is taking the full height advantage of the 8 stories. And this is a good example of what we were just talking about in terms of a lot of back and forth, and the development's going to take the original idea for this one came probably 7 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And then they got their approvals about 1.5 years ago, and they're just starting construction of the first phase now, and it'll be another probably 2 years before they finish. But there's really 2 phases of this project. Phase 1 is what's being constructed now. It'll be a La Meridian hotel.
Okay.
A couple hundred units of a hotel space. And you talk about how does a design develop over time. This was originally 2 business traveler level hotels that were shared a common lobby space. They were both Marriott hotels.
Okay.
But as we kept working with them to upgrade their look and feel to meet the Arcadia standard, it kept going up the Marriott product chain to where we're at Le Méridien, which is second only to the Ritz-Carlton in their design ethos. So it's about a 4.5-star hotel.
Wow.
It'll be full service, banquet facilities, first class restaurant, the whole thing. That'll be ready probably around 2020, start of 2020. And then the condominium component is phase 2 of this. That'll be about 96 units, 8 stories. That'll also have a commercial ground floor, a retail component to it. And we're still finalizing the absolute look of it. The city council wanted one more look. They said we like it generally, we're okay with the height and the width, but there are a few details we'd like to see again before we formally approve it.
What is the typical hotel currently in Arcadia, if you know the average kind of star rating of most of the other ones?
They're generally 2 or 3 star hotels. Something like the Embassy Suites would be considered a 3-star hotel. The rest of them that are more business class travel or simpler accommodations, they're great hotels, but they tend to be 2-star hotels.
Wow. And then so some of these other projects that are in the works, how about the one on Las Tunas and Santa Anita, the Olson project?
Sure. This is the old commercial center that was a large grocery store and an auto parts store, the Goodwill in its latest rendition. We have built, or the private development has built, a Starbucks is doing great on that corner, if you know that area.
Yeah.
And the Olson company will put a small commercial center near that Starbucks, about 8,000 square feet, and then it'll have a mix of uses, all more single-family townhome in scale. So they'll be touching, but they'll have their own entrances, they'll have their own parking garage, that sort of thing. So it'll look more like the single-family, slower, lower development that's down in that part of town.
Do you have any idea of, I guess it depends on each development, but the types of families or people that will be moving into these places? Any rough idea about the target demographics for them?
For the most part, in Arcadia, developers are building for small families, or in a lot of cases large families, but they're not really looking. Most communities in Los Angeles are building a lot of small format, people straight out of college, don't have a family yet sort of housing. Arcadia is different because, again, of the school system we have here and the price point to get into land in Arcadia. They're really building for families. So I think you're expecting people who are a little more established, people who, large format apartments, 2-3 bedroom type things, not studios and 1 bedrooms for the most part.
Do you guys have a average price point for some of these?
We're seeing, when we ask the developers, they tend to tell us between $700,000 and $1 million for condos and townhomes, depending on what the amenities are with them or the overall size.
What do you think is making, it seems like there's a lot going on, a lot of attraction into Arcadia from these developers, and they see obviously great opportunity here. Why now? What do you think is leading to this?
Well, I think that there are a number of things that are working on it. The first is the Gold Line absolutely attracts people. We've upgraded the zoning in the heart of our downtown to make it more economically interesting for developers. There's a high price point for our land, and if you don't have enough density, it doesn't make sense to build on top of it in some cases. We have a lot of property owners who've held on to their land for 40 and 50 years, and it's just time to do something with it. So a lot of properties that haven't been in play in a generation or two now are on the market, and so there's opportunity. And then we're a safe community. I've mentioned it at least twice now, but the school district's fantastic. That is a draw. We've got, more and more, we're known for our food offerings along Baldwin and the regional mall that's right here and the racetrack and all the things that brought for generations people to Arcadia. And there's an opportunity to build more houses. People are going to want to buy them, and that's a pretty safe investment for the developers.
So when you hear this and developers want to come here and we have all these great factors, I know Arcadia, I forget exactly who voted it, it's one of the most attractive cities to live in America for families, and the school district, as you mentioned, is doing well. How exciting is this for you guys as a city and a city council to say, we got some great opportunity here to make Arcadia from a great city to even better?
Yeah, it's super exciting. The One of the things we've said is Arcadia is an elite community, and you drive around our residential areas, and it's nothing but elite housing and all of that. But our commercial centers have kind of been lagging behind because there hasn't been the investment in the last 25 years in a lot of those neighborhoods. Mall looks great. The racetrack has done a lot in the last couple of years to upgrade itself, but a lot of our commercial strips are looking tired, and so we're excited to see change in a good way. Again, not getting too dense, not forgetting that traffic exists and people need places to park, and keeping in mind that this is still Arcadia, the community of homes. We don't want to lose our vision on that. But it's exciting to see the opportunity of those commercial corridors coming around and becoming what they once were, and then maybe even better than that.
How tough of a balance is that for you guys to keep what we have? We have a great community, but you want to move with the times and attract business and bring in revenue to the city so we can continue to upkeep everything and have great fire, great police, and everything that we have. How tough is that balance for you guys?
Well, it's one of those things that every developer asks for more. Right? It's easy to ask for more, and again, they don't care about your community specifically. Right. But one thing that we have here is a very consistent council in their vision. We've changed a lot in the last couple of years with our city council as different members come and go, but there's a consistent vision on what they expect this community to be. And it's easy to tell the developers, what the rules and regulations are and what the vision for the community is. And when they know that there's an established vision, and it becomes easy and predictable for them to work within, you have a good relationship with the folks that come to town. So it's not as hard. I don't have it as hard as some communities where the vision changes from day to day.
Good position to be in if you're in Arcadia, where people want to come to you.
Yeah.
So then some of these projects that are in the planning process, let's talk about some of those.
Sure.
The Wheeler-Huntington mixed-use one.
Okay, so this one is right in the downtown. It's there are two public parking lots. If you know Matt Denny's restaurant behind that, there's a public parking lot, and there's a party rental back there, and then another parking lot. And what has happened is 3 private property owners got together to put their parcels on the market, and then they have asked us to participate with this. So the idea is that pretty large development will be developed, about 5 stories at its apex, but 2 stories when it's on Huntington Drive, and then it gets larger as it goes back towards those properties back up to the Gold Line. So they'd be eventually 5 stories high, but really from the street it'd feel like a 2 or a 3 story development. And so we would participate by providing our land. We would get more parking spaces from it in the end development process, plus the developer would give us several $1 million to build more parking in the downtown elsewhere to accommodate the increased density. And that's on top of all the parking that would be required for their own units and their own commercial needs. So we're really kind of trying to establish a central parking area or 2 in the downtown where we can, much like in the Pasadenas of the world, where there's a central parking lot and then you walk to wherever you're going, and you may stop in 3 or 4 shops instead of just going to the one you're gonna visit. So this is kind of the first really large-scale development that's been proposed in the downtown, and there's still a lot of moving pieces on it. Everyone's fine-tuning exactly what the vision is, but the initial design, again, a lot of brick, has a big courtyard in the middle of it as a community public gathering space, trying to be sensitive again to the look and feel of Arcadia's historic downtown, but modernizing it in a way that'll attract people there.
When our superintendent was talking with one of our PTA meetings, and we were talking about the developments and mentioning your presentation you did for our Board of Education, everyone was very excited, but you talked about everyone's top of their mind is parking and traffic.
Yes.
And I know you guys put a lot of thought into that. You're just not going to let everyone come in without going through that process. Yes. So what is that kind of process with the parking and the traffic that you guys have done a great job thinking all that through?
Well, every parcel and any project proposal we have will have to do some kind of a parking study to prove that what they're proposing won't impact negatively the traffic and the circulation in the downtown or wherever they're proposing, in the immediate area wherever that development is. In addition, the City Council, beyond what its limited or limitations are within the general plan and the zoning code, we don't, everyone talks about, they've heard the word variance, and a lot of communities, they're handed out like candy. This community doesn't do that when it comes to parking. It's one of the things that makes Arcadia special is there's always plenty of parking, and it's free these days.
Yeah.
And the council is very selfish about that. And then, like I said a moment ago, they're also looking for opportunities to expand public parking beyond what's there today to make it even easier. So a lot of pressure in the development world is to say that self-driving cars are coming and Uber and Lyft are going to take care of the parking problem, and we're not going to have cars anymore. Until we see real concrete evidence of that, we're still planning that every development needs to have a reasonable amount of parking, and we're holding to the standards that we've established that we think will provide for enough parking for the uses that are operating there.
If we go back 50 years, we're not supposed to have radios right now either, but we still have those around as well. So that's a good point by you guys. The Huntington Village, how about this one?
So this is the old Vaughn's headquarters. There's a great Korean grocery store on the southeast side of this development. That probably won't go anywhere. It just opened and it's doing great business, and the property owners don't want to do anything with that. But the rest of that site is 2 large parking lots and a giant old, most recently it was the Vaughn's headquarters, but prior to that it was the May Company building, and it's a single purpose, just a giant floor plan, old department store. And the developers are looking at reusing that building, keeping its 1960s era shell, and then either creating commercial or residential within that shell, and then adding residential on top of the parking structure, and then bringing commercial and residential to the southern frontage of the property. So if anybody knows that development, the May Company building is 40 feet high, and that would sort of create a lid for the whole development. So everything would be less than or equal to that current height of the building, and it would be townhomes, commercial, retail, those types of things, office space, could be medical office. Again, this is more of a vision at this point than anything that's gotten approved. City Council is generally bought off on the concept of the density and the ideas that they have, but the developer's making sure that what they're proposing pencils out. So this would need a zone change, but on 3 sides of the project are either single family or multifamily housing. So we see it as a good transition site of, right now it's all commercial, but if it was some commercial and some residential, it'd be a good transition into those residential neighborhoods. But we would be highly defensive of the traffic and circulation and the look and feel around the residential sides of that project, and put most of the active spaces down on Huntington where people expect to see retail activity.
And then the bowling alley site, what about this one?
So the Arcadia Lanes closed a little more than a year ago, and the developer has acquired that parcel as well as one kind of catty corner to that, where in the kind of on the Baldwin side of it, the frontage, they want to do a 2-story retail component with a tea garden on the upper floor, a big, like I said earlier about a lot of the apartment buildings are putting out gardens on the upper floors. Well, this developer wants to put a commercial, it's like a restaurant space, but it would have an outdoor tea garden that you can sit out there and take advantage of the views to the mountains to the north. And then there would be a small residential component attached to that building. I think it's 17 units or so. And then there's a separate building that has 9 units that they would develop at the same time. They have kind of a different look. They don't actually touch. They would share a parking lot with other uses in between them. So the look and feel isn't as cohesive as we've seen in some of the other developments, but they would be developed at the same time by the same developer. Then I guess it was 27 units, not 17.
And this is the one on South Baldwin?
Yes.
Okay. And then, so that's a lot in the works. What's the first couple that will be roughly estimated timeline that they'll be done, completed, and we'll start seeing people moving in and all that?
So I think you may see people moving in right at the first of the year at the one on Wheeler, which is right by the Gold Line station. If you drive there now, they're just about to put stucco on the outside, and it's really starting to look like a finished product. Same thing with the one down on Duarte. Stucco's on the outside, and it's getting down to let's just do the finishes on the inside. So those are the two that probably the start of 2019 you'll see active and ready to go. Beyond that, you're going to have some more that are a year or two out, or could be as many as 5 or 7 years by the time they get fully formed and occupied and all of that. Now, if all of these come as they're currently proposed, you're talking about 750 units. So it's a good thing that it might take some years to, otherwise we'd overwhelm the community with development. We don't want to do that. But we will see kind of a constant change happening in the community.
So what's kind of the next steps for you and the city council as these things keep progressing into the future?
Well, I think it's looking at those two larger sites that are a little more ideas rather than approved concepts now. The one in the downtown, the larger one, and the old Vaughn sites, really working with the developers to finalize those things. And part of what happened about a month and a half ago is the city council enhanced the zoning in the downtown to clarify some of its vision down there. And so we'll be reaching out to other developers and property owners in the downtown to look for opportunities down there for renewal. And there are a lot of really small individual property ownerships down there. And if there's an opportunity to put them together and create something for the next generation, we'll be interested in helping developers do that.
Well, this is very exciting for us as a school district because, as maybe not everybody knows, school districts around us in our area and actually all throughout the country are declining enrollment because there's so many educational options now with online and charter schools and magnet schools. So for a district to actually increase enrollment right now is very rare, but it's very exciting because more students and we can hire more staff, and it just makes the school district and all the schools better from that perspective. The more students you have, and you get additional funding too into the schools, so it's very exciting for us. And so we're just starting to talk with our parents about what this means for our schools and how many students to expect and all that. And I know there's no real rough estimate, at least from us yet. I don't think you guys, as far as how many students or school-age children that would translate into. But so the residential units, you said, is about 750 around there. So for us, it's just extremely exciting, and we know some of these projects are several years out, but just looking forward to it. We're very excited for it, and it brings us some opportunity, some small challenges, but mostly opportunity, which is great. So thanks to you and all the city council. I know you guys put in a ton of work, and it's very exciting for us.
Yeah, it's an exciting time in Arcadia. And when you're talking about 750 units, it keeps to the average family size in Arcadia. That ends up being about 2,500 or 3,000 new residents in the city. So some of those, a good chunk of them are going to be school-age students. So it's because we're not just building small format studios and one bedrooms. There's a good chance that it'll be new students and new families in Arcadia. So it'll be neat.
If anyone wants additional information, where can they go? Is there a website, or where can
there is? The best place to go is arcadiaca.gov.
Okay.
And development services is where most of these things are hidden on our website. But you can also call 574-5401 and ask about any development you're interested in, and we can get you to the right people.
Awesome. Dominic Lazzaretto, City Manager for Arcadia. Thank you so much for your time, sir. Very exciting news, and appreciate you stopping by the Digital Education Station.
This is fun. Thanks.
Thank you.